please subscribe and share for more story. Evelyn Carter was 58 years old, living alone in a quiet suburb just outside Columbus, Ohio. The winters in her neighborhood stretched like long gray ribbons across the months, and the silence inside her house often felt too loud, too sharp, too aware of her loneliness. For years she had lived peacefully, carrying her memories like folded linens tucked neatly into drawers. But there was one night, one phone call that split her life into two halves. Before that call, she still believed in the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. After it, she learned a truth she had spent decades refusing to see. Under the soft glow of her bedside lamp on that cold evening, she discovered that a mother can pour her soul into a child for nearly a lifetime and still lose him in a moment. The call had not come out of tragedy, but out of something far more painful: distance, grown slowly and quietly, like frost spreading across glass. And although she could not have known it then, everything she understood about love, sacrifice, and motherhood was about to be tested in ways she had never imagined. The memory of that earlier call still came to her easily. Her son, Adrian, had phoned her one rainy Tuesday evening. She remembered the way the raindrops slid down her living room window like tiny rivers as she picked up the phone. His voice, normally brisk and confident, carried an unfamiliar hollowness. "Mom," he said, "I wanted to tell you, we're planning something big for Jonah's birthday." Evelyn smiled automatically, the way mothers do when their children mention grandchildren. "A celebration? That sounds wonderful," she replied. Adrian began describing the extravagant event they were organizing in their new estate in Atlanta: hired entertainers, themed decorations, influential guests. Yet as he spoke, Evelyn sensed a distance between them, as though he were calling from another world entirely. She ignored the ache inside her chest. "Of course I'll come," she said eagerly. He hesitated. She heard it, but he didn't stop her. "Yet sure, Mom," he murmured, "if you really want to." She brushed off the hesitation like dust. 10 hours on the road meant nothing to a grandmother longing to see her grandson. Jonah was one of the last living pieces of her late husband, and she clung to that connection like a lifeline she could not lose. Evelyn began packing days in advance, treating the task as though she were preparing for a ceremony. She folded her clothes carefully, smoothing out wrinkles, as though the fabric itself carried meaning. But the real treasures were the gifts she had prepared. First was a weighted blanket she had spent months knitting, stitching each thread with love and memory. Adrian had mentioned once, almost casually, that Jonah struggled with sleep. That single comment had lodged itself in Evelyn's heart. She wanted her grandson to feel safe, comforted, wrapped in warmth that came from her hands. Second was a vintage leather-bound photo album she had spent weeks assembling. Inside were generations of their family, sepia-toned portraits, faded snapshots, and pictures of Adrian as a child, missing his front teeth, laughing beside his father. "Jonah should know where he comes from," Evelyn whispered to herself as she packed it. "He should know his roots are strong." When everything was ready, she zipped up her suitcase with a sense of purpose, imagining the moment Jonah would run into her arms. She could already hear his small voice shouting, "Grandma." That fantasy kept her warm as she prepared for the long drive south. The 10-hour drive felt endless, and yet filled with anticipation. With only the radio and her thoughts for company, Evelyn replayed old memories of Adrian as a boy. She imagined how he would smile when he saw her at the door, and she pictured Jonah sprinting toward her in excitement. By the time she finally reached the neighborhood, lined with mansions and trimmed hedges, her stomach fluttered like a nervous heartbeat. The sun was dipping toward the horizon, casting a warm glow on the enormous White House before her. Silver and gold balloons arched over the entrance. Music drifted through the windows, elegant and distant. She parked her aging sedan among rows of luxury vehicles and took a deep breath. "Here we go," she whispered. She lifted her suitcase from the trunk, straightened her cardigan, and walked toward the grand front door. When she rang the bell, her heart pounded, not from exhaustion, but from hope. The door swung open and there stood Adrian, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. His face, however, was unreadable. He didn't smile. He didn't open his arms. His eyes flicked past her, scanning the driveway as though expecting someone else. "Mom," he said slowly, What are you doing here?" The question hit her like a physical blow. Evelyn forced a smile because that was what mothers did. They softened their pain so their children wouldn't see it. "I came for Jonah's birthday," she said gently. "I wanted to surprise him." Adrian's jaw tightened. Before he could answer, Evelyn heard the sharp click of heels across the marble floor. Lila, her daughter-in-law, appeared in the doorway. She looked like she belonged on a magazine cover, elegant silk dress, diamonds catching the chandelier's light, phone clutched like a scepter. She stopped abruptly when she saw Evelyn. "Adrian," she said, her voice slicing through the moment, "did you invite her?" She didn't look at Evelyn at all. She stared through her, as if Evelyn were an inconvenience on her doorstep. "I mentioned the party," Adrian muttered, "but I didn't think. This cannot be happening," Lila hissed under her breath. She stepped closer to her husband, lowering her voice just enough to keep her veneer of politeness, though Evelyn still heard every word. "Look at her, Adrian. She's not dressed for this. We have partners and investors inside. Do you want them to see this?" Evelyn glanced down at her comfortable slacks and wool cardigan. Suddenly, she felt painfully out of place. Lila folded her arms, her expression tightening. "She needs to leave," she said coldly. "I won't have this party turning into some kind of family scene. Either she goes, or I walk back inside and make sure everyone knows we're dealing with drama." Adrian looked back and forth between his wife and his mother, his eyes full of conflict. Evelyn could feel her heart pounding in her chest. "Adrian," she whispered. In the silence that followed, she saw something in him crumble. Not love. Not loyalty. Fear. Fear of displeasing his wife, of losing his image, of being embarrassed. "Mom," he finally said, his voice barely audible. Maybe it's better if you go. You should have called first. It's not a good time." Evelyn swallowed the ache rising in her throat. She tightened her grip on the suitcase handle. Inside it lay the blanket and the photo album, gifts meant to bridge the widening gap between them. "It's fine, Adrian," she managed to say. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "I understand." She turned away before either of them could see her eyes fill with tears. The heavy door clicked shut behind her, the sound echoing like a final judgment. Evelyn walked back to her car with slow, deliberate steps, afraid that if she moved too fast, the heartbreak might spill over into sobs. She placed the suitcase in the trunk, wiped her eyes, and forced herself into the driver's seat. The house behind her buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and lively music, sounds of people celebrating while she sat outside in the dark, discarded like an afterthought. She drove away, without looking back. The glowing estate lights blurred through her tears as she exited the neighborhood. She found a small, rundown motel on the outskirts of the city, its neon vacancy sign flickering against the night sky. Inside the cramped room, the wallpaper peeling and the air conditioner rattling, Evelyn finally let herself cry. She cried for the long drive she had made with hope in her heart. She cried for the blanket Jonah would never receive, and for the photo album filled with memories no one wanted to see. Mostly, she cried because she realized something devastating, that the son she had raised with every fiber of her being had grown into a man who valued appearances more than his own mother. Something fragile inside her cracked that night. But by morning, something else had hardened. Back in Columbus a week later, Evelyn did her best to resume her routine, though everything felt heavier, muted. She moved through her days on autopilot, watering her plants, making tea, attending the senior center on Tuesdays. The house felt colder. The framed photo of Adrian as a child, once proudly displayed on her nightstand, now sat face down in a drawer. Then one night, just after 2 a.m, the phone rang. The sound jolted her awake. She answered, her voice groggy. "Hello." "Mom," Adrian said, breathless and panicked. "I need your help." Evelyn sat upright instantly. "What is it?" "We're in trouble," he said. "It's urgent. I need a large sum of money." She felt a strange calm settle over her. "How much?" "Around 60,000. The number hung in the air like a weight. "If we don't pay by Friday," he continued, "we lose the house. The cars. Everything." Evelyn closed her eyes. 60,000. More than half a retirement. Money saved from decades of hospital shifts, scrubbing floors, comforting patients, and sacrificing everything for him. "Please, Mom," Adrian pleaded. "You're the only one I can turn to." His desperation cut through the line. But Evelyn remembered the door closing in her face. She took a slow breath. "Adrian," she said softly, "do you remember last week?" He went silent. "Yeah, I remember," he answered reluctantly. "Look, Mom, I'm sorry about that." Lila was stressed. "It was a big event. You know how she gets." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "I know exactly how she gets," she replied. "But I also know what you did." "Mom, please," he said, impatience creeping into his voice. "This isn't the time. We're talking about losing everything." "No," Evelyn said calmly. "We're talking about my life savings. The money I worked for while raising you alone." Adrian groaned. "Are you really doing this? Right now?" "I drove 10 hours to see my grandson," Evelyn continued, her voice steady. "And you sent me away. You didn't even open the door fully." "Mom." "And now," she added, cutting him off, "you want me to rescue you from a situation you created?" His voice cracked. "Please. I'm begging you." Evelyn felt the old instinct rise, the urge to protect him, fix everything, shield him from consequences. But something stronger rose with it. Her dignity. The dignity she had been forced to swallow for years. And with steady breath, she prepared to speak the 5 words that would change everything. "You reap what you sow," Evelyn said softly. The line went dead for several seconds, as if Adrian were processing words he had never expected from her. "What?" he whispered. "You heard me," she replied. "You planted disrespect. You planted carelessness. You planted arrogance. And now you're facing the consequences." His tone shifted instantly, turning sharp. "You can't do this," he snapped. "You're my mother." "Exactly," she said. "And because I'm your mother, I've saved you from every mistake since you were a child. I paid for things I couldn't afford. I sacrificed pieces of myself I'll never get back. And all it did was teach you that you could treat me however you liked." "This is unbelievable," he spat. "You're bitter. You're punishing me for Lila." Evelyn almost laughed, though there was no humor in it. "I'm not punishing you," she said. "I'm letting you grow." His voice broke again. "If you don't help us," he said, "you are dead to me." Evelyn inhaled slowly. "You made me dead to you long before this call. I'm just finally accepting it." She hung up. Her hands shook, her heart raced, but she didn't cry. Instead, she felt something unfamiliar, freedom. Evelyn didn't sleep after the call. She sat in the dim light of her kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she never drank. Her mind replayed Adrian's voice, first desperate, then angry, then cruel. Once, those tones would have shattered her. But now they only echoed in the hollow space he had created long before. As dawn crept across the sky, painting the frost-covered yard in pale silver, she felt something shift inside her. For the first time in her adult life, she asked herself who she was outside of motherhood. Who was Evelyn Carter, the woman, not Evelyn, the mother? The next few days were quiet but heavy. She ignored the urge to call Adrian back. She ignored the little voice that whispered she had ruined everything. Instead, she went for walks. She read books she had forgotten she owned. She even pulled out old paintbrushes from a drawer, tools she hadn't touched since her husband died. The silence still hurt, but it no longer suffocated her. It felt like the beginning of something unfamiliar. Something she wasn't sure she deserved yet, peace. News of Adrian's downfall reached Evelyn not through him, but through distant relatives who followed social media more closely. "They lost the house," one cousin murmured over the phone. "Had to sell the cars too." Another whispered, "Lila posted something dramatic online. Blamed family betrayal." Evelyn listened quietly, expression unreadable. It wasn't satisfaction she felt. Not vindication. It was grief, a slower, deeper kind. the grief of watching her son become a stranger to himself. She returned to her routine, though her heart felt heavier. When she visited the senior center, her friends noticed the change. "You look lighter somehow," one remarked. "Are you all right?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "I stopped carrying a weight that wasn't mine," she replied. They didn't push further. Instead, they sat with her, giving her company without questions, a kindness she hadn't realized she needed. Days melted into weeks. Winter thawed into the first hints of spring. Slowly, Evelyn felt herself returning to her own life, one she had neglected in the shadows of motherhood. One afternoon, at the grocery store, Evelyn turned a corner and froze. Standing near the fruit display was a woman she recognized immediately, Miranda, Lila's mother. Evelyn's instinct was to steer her cart away, but Miranda's gaze lifted at the last second. Their eyes met. There was no avoiding it now. "Evelyn," Miranda called softly. Evelyn braced herself. She expected accusations, bitterness, maybe even humiliation. But Miranda approached slowly, her posture tired. Her perfectly styled hair was looser than usual, and her eyes carried exhaustion. "Can we talk?" she asked. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. They walked to the coffee shop next door, ordered drinks, and sat across from each other in the corner booth. The silence was thick until Miranda finally said, "I know what you did." Evelyn's shoulders stiffened. "I'm not going to apologize for it." "I'm not asking you to," Miranda replied. She wrapped her hands around her cup. "Before Adrian called you, Lila asked us for money too. A much larger amount, actually." Evelyn blinked in surprise. "And we said no," Miranda continued. "We realized we'd created someone who believes the world owes her comfort." She sighed. "Watching your refusal made me feel less alone." They talked for nearly 2 hours, two mothers from different worlds, united by the same painful realization that love, when given without boundaries, can rot the very people it intends to protect. "Lila screamed at us," Miranda admitted. "She told her father he was useless, that we owed her the life she wanted." Evelyn shook her head slowly. "I'm sorry," she murmured. Miranda nodded. "We can handle it." "But Adrian," she paused. "He's not handling things well." Evelyn's heart tightened. "How bad is it?" "He's working construction," Miranda said softly. "He can't get hired anywhere else after the bankruptcy." Evelyn looked away, swallowing the ache that rose inside her. "And Lila?" "She's trying," Miranda replied carefully. "She's taken a receptionist job." Reality has been a slap she wasn't prepared for. Evelyn stared into her tea, feeling both sorrow and a strange sense of clarity. "They're suffering," she whispered. "Yes," Miranda agreed, placing a gentle hand over hers. "And it has to hurt. Otherwise they will never change. And neither will we." When they finally left the cafe, the sun was already setting, and for the first time in months, Evelyn felt understood. Truly understood. Months turned into nearly a year. Then another passed. Evelyn focused on rebuilding her life. She painted stormy seas and foggy forests, her canvases filling the once empty walls of her home. She joined book clubs, took long walks, and allowed herself to simply exist without guilt. Gradually, the sharp edges of her pain softened. Then, one crisp September morning, she found a plain white envelope in her mailbox. There was no return address, but she knew the handwriting immediately. Adrian's hurried, uneven script. Her heart lurched. She carried the letter inside, but didn't open it. She placed it on the kitchen table and stared at it for days, afraid of what it might contain. Anger? Blame? Desperation? On the third morning, after a restless night, she brewed a strong cup of coffee and finally tore it open. Her breath caught as she began reading. "Dear Mom," the letter began. The words were shaky, vulnerable. Adrian wrote of the small apartment he now lived in, of waking before dawn each morning to haul drywall, mix cement, and carry tools. "My back hurts every day," he admitted. "My hands are rough and cracked." He confessed that he had never understood the kind of exhaustion she carried during her years as a hospital worker. "I thought it was normal," he wrote. "I thought you were just doing what mothers do." He spoke of Lila's breakdowns, of nearly divorcing, of the shock of losing everything they once flaunted. Yet nowhere in the letter did he ask for money. Not once. Instead, he wrote of lessons learned the hard way, of humility forced into him like cold wind. "I reaped what I sowed," he admitted, "and it tasted bitter. But maybe I needed it." Evelyn paused, tears burning in her eyes. The second half of the letter spoke of Jonah. "He found the blanket you made," Adrian wrote. "It was in a box we never unpacked." Evelyn's breath hitched. "He sleeps with it every night now," the letter continued. "He calls it his grandma blanket." Adrian confessed that he had told his son the truth, that grandma loved him and that daddy had made a terrible mistake. "I miss you, Mom," he wrote. "I miss who I was with you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know I'm trying." Evelyn placed the letter over her heart and wept, not with the grief of a broken mother, but with the relief of one who finally saw her child turning back toward the light. But Evelyn did not respond immediately. She let the letter sit on her dresser for another month, allowing time to settle the emotional dust inside her. She needed to heal more. She needed to believe the change was real, not just desperation wrapped in apology. When she finally wrote back, her letter was gentle but firm. She told Adrian she loved him, had always loved him, and that she admired the work he was doing to rebuild his life. She made no promises, no invitations, no quick reconciliation. She simply offered honesty. And then they began exchanging letters every few weeks. Handwritten ones. Slow, thoughtful. Each letter carefully crafted, allowing both of them to rebuild the foundation they had shattered. Through ink and paper, they learned each other again, not as the mother who gave everything and the son who took without limit, but as two flawed people trying to meet in the middle. 2 full years passed before Evelyn saw Adrian again. On a warm autumn afternoon, she heard a car pull into her driveway. She peeked through the window cautiously. A beat-up sedan sat where a luxury SUV once would have. Her heart raced. She stepped onto the porch. The car door opened, and Adrian emerged. He looked older, thinner in the face, with strands of gray at his temples and a weariness in his eyes that spoke of hard-earned humility. He didn't move toward her immediately. Instead, he stood beside the car, waiting. Then the back door opened, and Jonah climbed out, holding the superhero blanket against his chest. "Grandma," he shouted. Evelyn's breath broke. She knelt just as he ran into her arms. His little body crashed into hers with a warmth she had dreamed of for years. Evelyn held Jonah tightly, breathing in the scent of childhood, soap, crayons, and something sweet. "I missed you, Grandma," he whispered into her shoulder. "I missed you too, my darling," she replied, her voice trembling. She looked up at Adrian. He was standing still, eyes shining with tears, hands in his pockets, as though afraid to intrude. "Come here, Adrian," she said softly. Only then did he move. He approached slowly, as though afraid she might vanish. When he finally hugged her, it was hesitant, gentle. But as she wrapped her arms around him, he broke. His body shook with sobs he had been carrying for years. "I'm sorry, Mom," he choked. "I'm so sorry." Evelyn stroked his back, feeling the roughness of labor on his hands. "I know," she whispered. "I know." They spent the afternoon inside Evelyn's warm living room. Jonah curled on the couch with his blanket while Evelyn and Adrian sat across from each other with mugs of cocoa. Conversation came slowly at first, like testing shallow water with one's toes. Adrian confessed. Everything, every fear, every regret, every moment he had realized how deeply he had taken her for granted. "I thought success made me a man," he admitted. "I didn't realize humility did." Evelyn listened quietly, her heart aching but open. She shared her own pain. The motel night, the loneliness, the years she felt invisible. Adrian winced at every word, but he didn't look away. "I deserved that," he whispered. "You deserved better," she corrected gently. There was no anger in her voice, only truth. Jonah wandered over with the photo album Evelyn once prepared for his 7th birthday. "Grandma, who is this?" he asked, pointing at a picture of Adrian as a little boy with missing teeth. Adrian leaned closer, smiling weakly. "That's me," he said. Jonah's eyes widened. "You look funny." Evelyn chuckled softly. "He was adorable," she said. They flipped through the pages together. Adrian studied each photo with new eyes, seeing not just his childhood, but the sacrifices behind every moment captured. "You looked so tired here," he murmured, touching a picture of Evelyn in hospital scrubs, holding him as a toddler. Evelyn smiled faintly. "I was tired," she said, "but I was happy. I had you." Adrian swallowed hard, emotion tightening his face. "You deserved a better son," he whispered. "I deserved an honest one," she replied. "And that's who you're becoming." Lila did not come that day. "She's not ready," Adrian explained quietly as they stood near the porch. "She's working through her own shame." Evelyn nodded. "That's all right," she said. "Healing takes time." She didn't want perfection. She wanted sincerity, and for the first time in years, she felt it in their presence. Before they left, Jonah hugged her again, burying his face in her neck. "Will you visit us soon?" he asked. Evelyn kissed the top of his head. "I will," she promised. When the old sedan backed out of the driveway, Evelyn stood on the porch long after the engine faded down the street. Her heart felt full. Not restored, not healed completely, but open. And open was enough. Over the next year, Evelyn and Adrian built something new. Not the old dynamic, where she gave until she was empty and he took until he felt whole, but a relationship rooted in mutual respect. They exchanged books. They cooked together on weekends. They talked about life, not money. Adrian no longer saw her as a safety net or a hiding place. He saw her as a person, a woman with her own dreams, fears, strength, and story. And Evelyn no longer saw motherhood as martyrdom. She saw it as partnership, a shifting one, where boundaries protected everyone involved. For the first time in her life, she felt like she had a son who truly saw her. Evelyn Carter learned something profound through her pain. Love is not infinite if it is abused. It must be nurtured, respected, honored. A mother's job is not just to give without end. Sometimes the most powerful act of love is stepping back and allowing the child to face the wind. "A tree cannot grow strong roots," she often said now, "if it never learns to stand against the storm." She had once feared losing Adrian forever. Instead, by risking that loss, she gave him the space to grow into a man capable of love, not dependence, not entitlement, but real love. A love returned, and that made all the difference in her world. She lost her son for 2 years, but when he came back, he did not return as the man who shut the door in her face. He returned as the man she always hoped he would become. And Evelyn finally felt whole. Thanks for watching. If you value stories of respect, dignity, and justice, please subscribe. It means more than you know, and it lets me keep sharing the lessons life has carved into me.